Welcome back everyone to the recap of round number 3 of my match against Grandmaster David Navara. Today was another really long game. I don't want to spoiler anything, but I'm really happy with how it went. The work is paying off. I got a really nice preparation on the board. And yeah, let's just jump right in to see what happened. I started this game as well with knight f3 like in the first one. In case you haven't seen the previous games, before this game the standings were 1-1. There were 2 draws before that. In the first game I was suffering with the white pieces, and in the second one where I had black, it was quite an uneventful draw, I would say. Alright, so we got this position once again, like we did in the first game as well. There David played e6, and after knight c3, bishop b4, the Ragozsin, where I also got my preparation on the board there, but after that he pretty much outplayed me, and I was lucky to save a draw in the first encounter. In this game he played the Slav, which is, I would say, his second main opening next to the Ragozsin. He can also play that from this move order. And here we got the same position on the board. So now he goes for e6, bishop g5, which might have come as a small surprise to him. Of course, he was still prepared and has quite a lot of experience with bishop g5 as well. But I think it's my first game where I actually went for bishop g5 in this position. Before that, I think I exclusively went for e3. I did also try this one funny idea against Yuan Yi in the World Cup, where I went for this, which I don't think has picked up since then, because I got a pretty bad position out of the opening. But it's actually not such a stupid line that he has to avoid bishop f5. And the thing which I think I forgot was that after queen b6, I'm supposed to go queen c2. I'm not so sure how Yuan Yi reacted. He might have played bishop b7 first. But in general, what I think I mixed up here, I might have played e3 against Yuan Yi, but I should go queen c2 in this position. Okay, anyway, I went for bishop g5. He went for the Cambridge Springs with queen a5. One of the big lines next to, I mean, black has so many options here. I recently made a repertoire for black on my YouTube channel for YouTube members, which you can happily check out, which was with a bishop e7 here. And of course, there's also bishop takes f6 in this position. Quite a lot of theory there as well. So he went for this, and here I played a line which I prepared a little bit before the match. I think when I looked at this, it was, I don't know, 5-6 days ago, which is the move bishop takes f6, which still has around 2,000 games, but not many high-level ones. Usually, what white is doing is, I think, knight bd2. Knight d2 is by far the main move. Also, c takes d5, of course, is an option, and after knight takes d5, both rook c1 and queen d2 should be the moves. But I wanted to play something rare, and I think the surprise definitely worked. I came across this idea from Amin Tabatabai, who recently played it against Vasily Ivanchuk in some open tournament. This was only, I think, about 2 weeks ago. And it looks a little bit strange, because usually in many of the lines, like for example here, after black takes on c4, I think this is one of the lines here, now white takes on f6, and then white takes on c4. And there is no doubt that black gets a pretty good version here. But there are some differences. And one benefit of playing this line with bishop takes f6 is also that after knight d2, black does not have to go for d takes c4. There's also quite a bit of theory, I think, with some moves like might be bishop b4 followed by some e5. There is also some knight e4. I'm not sure if it's exactly here. But with bishop takes f6, we're just in some playable territory immediately. Okay, so a3 is the idea, to stop bishop b4, otherwise I could come into some trouble on this diagonal. He played knight e4, which I think is the most natural move by far, and also the move which is mostly chosen in tournament practice. And it was also played by Vasily Ivanchuk against Amin Tabatabai. The computer wants, like at least from what I remember checking, the best move according to the machine is probably g6, which looks quite unnatural, though, I would say, because, I mean, the bishop has quite a nice square in e7, and black is just losing time with this. But yeah, the engine just wants to play like this with bishop g7 short castle, and black shouldn't have many problems, but it's, you know, it's just a playable position. Also, what he played is not bad at all. Now bishop e7. The whole point of the line is if black takes on c3, then I cannot go rook takes c3 because of bishop takes a3. Here I'm just losing on the spot because I cannot take because the rook is hanging. But the point is that I can play queen d2, and then on the next move I can recapture. Probably with the rook in most cases, because if I take with the queen, then usually the endgames are completely fine for black. But if I keep the queens on the board, then my space advantage could matter a bit more. All right, so here I spent a bit of time, but I was still in book. The main thing was if I should start with bishop e2 or bishop d3. This is what I was thinking about, but bishop d3 is anyway the more natural square, and I just checked my notes again, and this was also what I had prepared. Now he took on c3, otherwise he needs to start thinking that I could take on e4 myself. Queen d2 again, this is the main idea, and I regain the piece because of the pin. Again, this rook takes c3, bishop takes a3, I should not allow. This is just bad for white. So queen e2, d takes e4, and I think that we're still following the game of Ivanchuk. I think he also reacted like this. The point is, if black castles, then if I take rook takes c3, and if he takes on c4 now, then I do get the extra option to take with rook here. I know that I said before that the endgame doesn't offer anything. I would also say that black is probably completely fine here, but it is at least one extra option, and of course I could also transpose to the game with bishop takes e4 here. Okay, so he took first, bishop takes e4. It looks a little bit strange, everything, because black is a piece up for the time being, but he cannot win it back. Also, I was looking at ideas like b5, but I can just go back bishop d3, and if he goes b4, I thought that this probably favors me because the bishop on c8 is quite bad. Pawn on c6 is also a weakness, so I thought this is nothing I should be worried about. He castled rook takes c3, and now after rook d8, I actually spent a lot of time. The only thing which I still analyzed here was the move c5. I just checked what I had here. And in the game, funnily enough, I was completely mixing up the lines. I thought that I was still in preparation for quite a long time. And I did know quite a bit of ideas in the game as well. But let me just quickly show you how my preparation went. It was c5, d takes c5. And I thought in the game, I thought that my preparation now was that rook d8 is the best move. But it turns out that that bishop f6 is the move. Knight d4, same reaction like in the game. Queen takes c5, bishop takes e6. Very similar to the game, just that the rook is not on d8 and my queen is not on c2. And here there was this moment where black can play... Was it queen g5 in this position? Okay, I need to cheat now. I think it should be this f4, queen h4, g3, queen h5, but I just had a hard time to figure out why. C8 is not hanging because the queen is on d2. That's the whole point. Yeah, now c8 is not hanging, and there was some line like this where in the end white is still up a pawn, but black should have full compensation because my pawn structure is weakened. So this was actually what I had written as my analysis. But in the game, for some reason, I thought that, as I said, that this was my preparation, and then everything included with queen c2. But there is actually quite a big difference, as we'll get into it in a second. So that's why I spent some time here. Queen c2, the other option I was considering was bishop d3, which actually turns out to be the correct move, or maybe a little bit better, objectively speaking, because now I think c5 is not so clear if black can as easily do that, because first of all, bishop c5 runs into b4, and if bishop f6, I think now I can just go rook c2 if I'm not wrong, and I should be able to consolidate. And this is exactly what white wants in general, to stop black from getting c5 or e5, and then black's position could be a little bit passive. Anyway, I went for queen c2, still thinking that this was all my preparation. Knight d4. And here queen takes c5 is what he played. He did spend a lot of time and I think also a lot of energy on those decisions. As you can see, at 50 minutes, and he after the move he only had 18 minutes left. During the game, I also thought that probably this or rook takes d4 is probably not so bad for black. but it should be quite pleasant for white. Like I was looking at some stuff like this, for example, now a5 or bishop d7. I think there's no doubt that white should be a bit better here. But on the other hand, black is also very solid. Maybe also the immediate b6 could work as well. So probably he was considering his options here. b4, by the way, doesn't work because of rook takes c4. And then black gets a lot of material. Okay, so he decided for queen takes c5, which I think is also good here. I played bishop takes e6, still thinking that this was all of my preparation. And here I thought that queen g5 is the correct move, even though it was the correct move in the other line. And black can play like this, I believe. But I think he should probably still play like David did in the game with queen a5. Because for whatever reason, I thought that this was what I had prepared. Queen h6, which is generally quite a nice idea because this is what I was calculating. Rook takes c8, and now in the end of it, you have queen e6 check. So I thought that this is how my preparation went, and then black has compensation, which is kind of similar to what we've seen earlier, but it's not the same. And I think that here I just have some at least David told me I have some pretty good options here. After queen h6, I'm not entirely sure. He mentioned some bishop takes f7, but I don't think it's here. Maybe it could work, but king f7, queen b3, king f8. Not entirely convincing. Rook c7, maybe bishop d7, or maybe queen g6 as well. But it looks all a little bit strange. I mean, yeah. Maybe rook c8 works. And yeah, perhaps maybe this is just winning. Yeah, I think rook c8 is just good, because now if he tries to do the same, then he doesn't have the double attack with queen e6, and I'm just a piece up. So he can still go for that, and he might even have a better version compared to the game if he goes queen a5 now, because I would say that f4 is probably more in his interest, because it can be a weakening move. But he decided to go for queen a5. He was quite low on time here already, as you can see. And this was actually a very good reaction. Like, I have to say, he calculated all of this really well, but he did spend quite a lot of time, and as I said, also energy, which I think in the end was problematic for him. I took on c8 now, which I think is fine. I didn't like b4 as much here, because I still thought that he could have this queen g5 idea. But also, even if he doesn't do that, I think he can just go queen b6. And this was David's whole point. If I go bishop c8 now, then he should have bishop takes d4, e takes d4, and again the same idea. And queen e6 in the end. And he's picking up the material. And should be completely fine, I guess. Even though, yeah, I don't believe in this. Because d4 is hanging. I don't think white can consolidate the pawn here. Would be my best guess. So I took on c8. Again, I didn't really check any of this with the engine, obviously. So please make sure to add anything which you think I forgot to mention here. I think that this is all good because he cannot do anything else. I mean, if he takes on c5 immediately, then I think this just doesn't work for black. I think that this was all fairly forced. The only thing which I briefly saw that what he did was also kind of possible, and I think I just sort of overlooked it in my preparation. But okay, still, I mean, I am a pawn up here, and I went for short castle, and then we got this endgame, which I guess, well, David surely saw in his calculation already from quite a few moves ago, and evaluated this as something which, I mean, as great compensation for black, where, I mean, there's no doubt about it. But I was also not unhappy to reach this position because I'm a pawn up, and black cannot really win the pawn immediately. If he would, then he wouldn't have any issues, could even potentially be a bit better, because the bishop and the rook are good, and black could create an outside pass pawn. He went rook c8, and I think that knight e2 was a good decision, which took me some time, because at first rook c1 is the move which you kind of want to make, but now my rook is stuck with the c-pawn, and I think that black has this good option, bishop e7, and after a4, rook c4. And now I don't think I can even keep my extra pawn, and black just gets a lot of activity. I mean, I was looking at some stuff like this, but it just looks wrong. I'm losing a lot of coordination here. So knight e2, he cannot take on c3 because of rook c1 when I'm winning the bishop. So he went rook c7. I was also here. He spent quite some time. Now he's actually threatening bishop takes c3 because after rook c1 he has bishop e5 or bishop a5, and he's not losing the bishop. So that's why I went rook c1. I guess he could have also started with some move like rook c4 when I had a couple of ideas. Mostly I just wanted to consolidate, for example, like this I could, and then maybe rook b3 next and try to bring the king. It anyway looks quite unpleasant for black, at least practically speaking. So he went for this, king f8, I brought my king as well, b5, king e1, rook c4, knight d4, a6 protecting the pawn on b5. I don't really have much to add for those moves. I think that was all fairly logical. King d2, bishop e7, and now knight c2. The pawn on e3 can always be protected by knight c2 and or rook a1, so I'm not going to lose that pawn. He went for king e8, centralizing the king. And here I went for knight b4, which looks like a bit of a strange move because I'm giving him an extra tempo to play a5, but the whole point was that now I'm just going back, and now I can attack the pawn on b5. What David also mentioned was that he didn't like after, if he goes rook a4, then I can go rook a1, and then again I have the idea to play knight b4. For example, if he goes king e8, knight b4, and now also knight c2. And also the rook seems a little bit strange here. I mean, maybe he can wait with a5, but otherwise I might just bring my king and then maybe play c4 at the right time. So yeah, he played king e8, knight b4, I provoked this, and now of course he does get b4. So I was thinking about this decision also to play knight b4, because I could start with a move like rook b1 first. And if he goes, for example, king d7, then knight b4. And if a5, then knight c2, because now he cannot exchange everything with b4 on the queen side, and I might keep some better winning chances, technically speaking. But okay, I mean, I saw this endgame coming, and I still thought that this was something I could play on forever. It's a very interesting practical endgame, and I hope that I won't go into too much detail here. Probably I can make a separate recap on this endgame itself. I now recall that Markus Raga mentioned in the live commentary that the whole game could be 3 recaps. The opening was interesting, the middle game was also interesting, and there could be a separate recap also for the endgame, which I agree, and maybe I'll do some more in-depth analysis on this endgame after my match, because I think it's quite interesting. Well, just to go back to this moment, again, maybe I could play a move like this, but yeah, I saw the endgame coming and was not too unhappy to get this. Obviously, if I want to keep any realistic winning chances, I need to keep as many pieces and pawns on the board as I can. The only thing I thought which would favor me would probably be an exchange of rooks, which to my surprise also soon happened in the game. If I take on b4, this 4 versus 3, David would hold against me and probably against anyone even in his sleep. So there's no point in trying that. Okay, he went bishop d6. I played h3. Wanted to keep the pawns on the light squares. h5, I think a very thematic move, just gaining some space and also avoiding g4. Because if black does nothing at all, like what white wants to achieve is to get a setup with g4 in, like for example something like this, and just have as much space as possible. And here was the surprising moment. Here David took on c1, and I'm 100% sure that David knew that this is a theoretical draw. Immediately after the game, he also mentioned some quite a few practical examples also from his own game. He mentioned that he did have this endgame with rooks on the board already, I believe even a few times, and always when he was white, it was very pleasant for him, and when he was black, then it was very unpleasant to defend. But I still think that this is probably the more practical thing to do here, to keep rooks on the board. And black probably will stay like this with the king on g7 and always try to exchange this bishop against the knight. I just remembered one thing. I'm sorry, I have to jump back a little bit because there was another possible rook endgame which could have appeared. It was at this moment after I played knight d4. I think that David could have taken on d4 here and now gone for rook a4. Rook a1. Was it here? a5. Yes, a5. And now the problem is if I go king d2, b4, king c2, then he can just take on c3, and then I cannot move my king because the pawn on d4 is hanging, and I cannot move my rook because then the pawn on a3 is hanging. So I think that black is making a draw fairly comfortably here. Otherwise, if king b3 is coming, I'm just winning. But I thought this was quite a funny drawing constellation, which I haven't seen before. But what I do have here, and what was my intention, was to go rook b1, rook takes a3, and then this endgame comes by force, which if you're a follower of this channel, you've probably seen this quite a few times already. I think I have 2 or 3 videos on this endgame already. So again, I know that this is a draw and David would have most likely be able to hold it against me, but there is always some chance to win this, and I've studied it quite carefully, so I wouldn't have been unhappy to enter this endgame. It's difficult to compare these endgames, like which one is easier to hold and which not. Like now, I would probably say that this was probably the best chance for black just to go for this immediately, looking back at how the game went at least. But yeah, if you know this endgame, I mean, this would probably be a good way to go to that, because I didn't see any other option to try something with white apart from this smart idea, rook a1, rook b1. Because if I go rook b1 immediately, then I don't even get... Well, I can maybe still get the pawn. But now the king will activate, and it's hard to believe this. Maybe the pawn will fall immediately. Okay, I'm getting a bit too deep in all of those lines here, so let's go back to what happened in the game. Here is where he decided to trade rooks. And I knew that this endgame is quite tricky. Actually, also with if I would have the bishop and black has the knight, like those 4 against 3 are usually not easy at all to defend. 3 against 2 is a different story. 3 against 2 in most cases is quite okay to hold. It's not that difficult, but 4 against 3 is not easy. He went g6, king d2, and maybe this is where it started to go wrong with for him with king f8. He should probably try to centralize his king here. I was also thinking about the option to play f5 here for him and just gain more space. The thing I wasn't sure though was, okay, if I go e4, I think this is now an easy draw for him if I exchange those 2 pawns. But I can go f3 and then e4, and I will always recapture with a pawn at the right moment. I could also maybe think to bring my king first. I mean, that makes even more sense. Just bringing the king to d5. And I mean, if I get all of that and then f3, e4, let's just say if black continues to wait with a move like, not bishop b4, but bishop b2, f3, let's say this. I mean, this could just also be losing because e5, e6, knight c6. I mean, I can play e7 maybe. So definitely not an easy decision for black to make, to go to this. This could be easily lost for black as well. So again, just my thoughts during the game here. I also need to analyze this more carefully to come to some conclusions. But probably keeping the king in the center would generally make a lot of sense. And if I continue in the same fashion like in the game, then maybe he can think of playing f5 at the right time. Like maybe it's here it probably doesn't work. But he should stop me, I think, from getting this f4 e5, which I got in the game. But to be fair, it's not easy to find a way to really stop it. So king d3, and either f5 is a draw or not. And otherwise it's difficult to see how to stop my plan of just getting the king here and then e4. I mean, maybe let's say he plays this here like he did in the game, but now g3 is probably working, so that looks a bit risky. My idea is to have king d6. Let's say like this. This might be a smart way to defend, because here the bishop is always in some danger to get forked, but maybe bishop f8. And if this, then maybe king d6. Because when I got the king to d5 in the game, I was starting to feel very optimistic of my chances. But if I don't get the king here, then it might be more difficult. Still, okay, I mean, if I get f4 e5 again, it's probably not easy, but in the worst case, can black also play like this? Again, really hard to say now. f5 could be a problem. Yeah. Because if I get e5 and then king d5, it's probably the same like what happened in the game. So maybe black has to do something like this to stop f4. And if g3, then usually some threats could come. I mean, this looks like the best which I can currently come up with, but it's a very difficult defense, I think. And that's also why I said keeping rooks on the board, I think, makes it a bit more easy for black to defend. I mean, this is really difficult. This is already a key moment, and I think that here it could easily already be very difficult for black, also in an objective sense, that it could be quite tricky already. In the game, to be fair, I wasn't sure until the very end if I'm winning or not. But let's see how that exactly happened. Okay, here we finally made the time control with bishop h2. Kind of a funny move, but I cannot trap the bishop because after g3, bishop g1, the bishop is escaping. And as I said, I don't really want to move any pawns here. Also, g4 would be a big mistake because then I'm just trading pawns and making black's defensive task much easier. So my plan here was to play e5, king e4, f4, and f5. And then if he takes, then recapture with the king. After which his pawn on h5 is actually quite a problem because sometimes I can try to capture the pawn. And this is also more or less what happened in the game. e5, bishop f4, king e4. Whenever he plays g5, trying to stop me from getting f4, it would just weaken the f5 square, so I didn't really even take it that seriously. I think I can maybe go something like king f3, knight f3, and try to capture the pawn somehow. I don't think that this should work. So bishop d2, f4, bishop c3. I went knight f3 now, just casually preparing f5. I thought I could maybe also start with this, because if he takes, I have the intermediate check and win the pawn endgame. But I want to recapture with the king, and here I can probably also get it like this. How did I think about it? Now, where was it? I think like this, king g5, knight f3, and then king f4, and then knight h4, king f5. I thought I can also get it like this, but didn't really see the reason. I can just start with knight f3. Another thing which I was generally evaluating was those lines with f5. Again, if I take, it's just an easy draw, but here I'm kind of lucky to have this resource with king d5, and he cannot take because of the fork, and otherwise I thought my pawn and king should be way too strong here. If the king would stand on e7 in this position, let's just say like this, I would be less sure here, because I'm not so sure that this is enough now for white. I think this should be a draw. And if the king goes back, again, with the pawn now being fixed on a dark square, I was not sure if this was enough to win. Could easily be a draw as well. But in the game, it just didn't work for him. Again, if f5, king d5 should do the job. So I got in f5. I think he needs to take. If I get f6, I just have too much space, and the pawn on f7 is always a weakness. So he took and went for this defensive setup with bishop d8. And of course, he needs to stop my king from getting to g5. If king h6, I have king f6 here. Now I already know that this endgame is winning, that this specific endgame is winning, because I was told so after the game. But during the game, I was not sure at all, even until the very end, if this is winning or not. David mentioned to me one game between, I think it was Gukesh and Ragozsin, who had something very, very similar, just with pawns on g3 and h4, and apparently there white should be winning as well. but I did not fully see the breakthrough there. So what I did here was just basically move around a bit and then hopefully try to find some more ideas later on. Because there were some ideas. For example, if this would be white to move, then I thought that e6 should be winning, because then he cannot take because of the fork. And yeah, this was one possible trick. And there were some other interesting zugzwangs which white can hope for. Maybe we will get that a bit later. For example, one other idea was if the bishop is on e7 here, like for example, if I get a position like this, then knight f6 should be winning because king h6 doesn't work due to knight g8. And otherwise the pawn on h5 is gone and he can never take. Pawn endgames are always losing here. Just one pawn is too much. So he needed to watch out to have this position with the bishop on d8, knight f6, king h6. But the thing I'm not sure is if my winning plan, which I chose in the game, which I actually didn't see until the end, is the only way how to win. I did it like this, and now knight d4. And now I realize that the c6 square is actually quite good for my knight, because then the bishop cannot go to e7 and cannot stay on d8. And otherwise it could be difficult to protect those two squares, g5 and f6. If my king reaches either of those, then I have a pretty big success already, yeah? And here is where I realized that I should probably be winning, when I played knight to c6. Because now, in the game he played king h6 and now g3, taken king f6, now I knew that I should be winning in this position. And the problem is, he doesn't have any other move, because if he goes with this bishop away, then I have king g5. Those positions I thought should always be losing, even though it was not so easy, because black can try to get the bishop to g3. Like, for example, if I do something like this, now I cannot take on h4 because there's bishop takes e5. I don't want to trade the pawns, but I thought what I could do here would be this. Maybe there are some other ways to win, but this was what I intended, just to exchange the weakness and then just to march back with the king to g4 and then to pick up the pawn. I think I'm just barely in time here. If the king reaches h5, it should also be losing, because I get knight to f4 check, king h6, and then king g4, and then I can pick up the pawn on h4. So yeah, whenever black goes h4, I realized that I should be winning that. What I am wondering is if black had some better defense in this position. Because here after knight c6, I think it's just over. But I don't really see it here. So maybe this plan of just trying to get the knight to c6, did I have this position already in the game? I think it was the first time I came with the knight to d4. Yeah. I mean, if black somehow tries to, or manages to achieve this position, well, then again, I can probably, like, let's just say he gets this setup with the bishop on d2, then I can probably try to get the knight to f4. Like this. I still cannot play king f6 because the knight is hanging. And if I never really wanted to play g3, because then the pawn could be sometimes hanging, but maybe this is just enough here, because if bishop e1, I can play king f6, and this should probably lead to something quite similar like in the game, I would assume. Which should be winning. And apart from that, let's say he waits like this. If king f6, there could still be h4. I don't know if well, that could actually be winning. Knight g2, take, king f7, king g5, e6. Okay, just to make some moves here to see. How is this exactly? h4, king g4, king f7, king e4, h4. Am I in time here or not? I don't think I am. No, black is promoting at the same time. I'm probably missing some really easy stuff here. If h4, king g4 I didn't like. King f6, king f3. So how is this endgame? Take, king g5, e6. This could be a draw. Okay, I don't see any other move. I think this is a draw. I will not cheat. If you guys have any suggestions here on improvements, let me know. I mean, this position should still be winning. The question is if I play with g3 or not. I could also have this idea, perhaps. Knight e2. Now I'm threatening king f6. If he goes bishop g5, then again, I can probably try to get my winning method. Because now he has to stay on this diagonal, and I can try to get the knight to c6 once again. And if he goes king g7, then I wanted to suggest knight g3. Again, if h4, the endgame should be easily winning, and if king h6, then I thought I have king f6 again. I think that's a possible way to win here. Getting the knight to f4 in this position. So yeah, here I got knight c6. He cannot wait with the bishop. If he goes here, then king g5 wins. And after king h6, I played g3. Take king f6, now the material is level, but I'm winning the f7 pawn. And the only thing I need to watch out here is not to let his king run. If I take on f7, then I think he's drawing like this, bishop c5, and yeah, if e7, he can just take and then pick up the pawn next. So I needed to precise here. I think knight e7 is good. Just not knight d8, because then he can win my knight and might even win the game. That would be a shame. So knight e7. He played h4. Again, resourceful, because if I take again, I'm not so sure if I'm winning this, because he can maybe do this. And knight e5, king f5, e7 take. I mean, I didn't really want to calculate any of this stuff, and I had a feeling that this would be a draw in the game. So I just gave a check. If he goes here, then his king is cut off, so I'm just winning. Just pushing the e-pawn. Played king h5, and now knight g7. I repeated once just to get some time, and now knight d6. Again, I didn't want to take because just didn't want to allow that. Bishop e5, knight takes f7. Now his king is not entering the game. King f5, bishop a3, e6, and now knight e5. I think the simplest. I'm threatening knight g6 followed by e7. So king h6, and I could just go for this, just not e7 now because of king f7, but I could probably win the pawn, and that should also easily win. But I thought king f6 is even easier, because after king h5, I play knight f3, and then I'm finally ready for e7. Again, I didn't want to go for this because now king g5, king f4 is coming. Again, maybe there's some win here, but I didn't see it, and this could be tricky. Maybe it's still winning though. King f6, king g3, king g5, yeah. Take and king h4. Still winning, but you know, I didn't want to do it like this. Knight f3 seemed very simple. Now I'm taking away the g5 square, and now if he takes, then the king cannot come in, so that would easily win, or just take on h4. So he tried one last funny trick, bishop g7 check. I should not take, because then it would be stalemate. But I played king f5, and here he resigned. I was briefly thinking if he would play bishop h6 and allow me this checkmate, but you know, it was a long day, so no hard feelings for that. So obviously, I'm really happy about the game. I think it was quite a nice technical game from my part. Preparation also went fairly well, even though I completely mixed up the line basically, and thought that everything was still in book, but I just missed this move order with rook d8, queen c2. But still, I think the idea worked quite well, at least for this one game. I think it's quite an interesting possibility against this line. Bishop takes f6 and a3 can definitely be tried, and I think that many people are going for knight e4 and maybe also knight takes e3 when white can, you know, argue to have some maybe small advantage. I don't think that the move g6, which the computer says is the best, is a move which can easily be found by a human in a game. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the recap. Let me know if you did, and I will see you guys tomorrow for the recap. I'm sure that David is going to be very keen to come back with the white pieces. So it's going to be difficult, but having a great time. And we'll see you guys tomorrow for the recap of round number 4. And before I forget, make sure to check out the first link in the video description of the Women in Chess Foundation. CEO is Emilia Castelao, who is doing a lot of work for the whole event, who is making the whole live broadcast possible. So if you want to contribute to Women in Chess, to Women Chess, and support her journey there and all of that stuff, make sure to check it out. That's the least I can do for all of the great work she's doing for the event. So yeah, just wanted to mention that. That was it for today, and I will see you guys tomorrow.